we present Elder Abuse Awareness. Along with myself, Patricia Hall, the State Long-Term Care Ombudsman, Mark Kelly, the Wyoming Department of Health Program Specialist, will be presenting today. Please hold all questions till the end of the presentation, putting them in the chat box or unmuting yourself. Our objectives today are to identify the signs of elder abuse, understand the reporting process when abuse is suspected, and learn the steps you can take to prevent elder abuse from happening. I would like to remind everyone that we are mandated reporters per state and federal laws. We are required to report any suspected abuse. It is not our job to substantiate the abuse, just to report suspected abuse. Providers are mandated reporters. It could be anything from obvious signs to a feeling that something is just not right. So stay alert and improve lives. Some statistics on elder abuse. 1 in 10 Americans age 60 plus have experienced some sort of abuse. For every one elder abuse case known to program and agencies, 23.5 are unknown, and only 1 in 14 cases of elder abuse ever comes to the attention of authorities. Elder abuse reduces older people's participation in life and in the communities. And it was estimated that it cost about $2.9 billion in 2009. And older adults who experience abuse or neglect are twice as likely to be hospitalized than other older people. Without accessible quality health and public services, our population becomes more at risk for abuse as we age. So let's go over some signs of the 3 major categories of elder abuse. We have emotion and behavioral, we have physical, and we have financial abuse. Some signs of emotional and behavioral abuse is everyone or someone that usually gets 6 hours of sleep is now only sleeping about 2 hours a night and having nightmares. Also a sign is a person who is usually very calm and confident becomes easily startled and agitated easily over seemingly trivial things. Someone who is usually outgoing is now isolating themselves, no longer doing the things that they enjoy, or may not be answering phone calls. Someone who is typically happy is now sad and maybe even being labeled as grumpy. A person who is talkative now has a caregiver or partner that is talking or answering questions for them in person or on the phone. APS sees a lot of this when they go to investigate allegations of abuse in the vulnerable adult home. Anytime you hear of name calling and threats, for instance, you hear residents say, "Oh, I can't do that, my son will get mad," or "my friend calls me names," or maybe "my daughter says I'm worthless," those are all signs of emotional and behavioral abuse. Some signs of physical abuse can include broken bones, bruises, welts, cuts, sores, burn marks, and frequent trips to the ER. Torn, stained, or bloody other clothing is a good sign that they are being sexually abused, along with sexually transmitted diseases without a clear explanation, especially in someone who is not sexually active. A person who is being physically abused may no longer have the will to clean or fix things up or take care of themselves, and may live in poor living conditions and just dirty surroundings. They may be depressed and not eat or drink, or maybe be denied food and water from their caregiver. They may be missing daily living aids such as glasses, walker, or medication. The caregiver may not be allowing them to have these things, or may be using these things as leverage to control them. You may see signs of unnecessary use of restraints like bruises around the wrists or ankles, or the person may be saying, "My caregiver, wife, son, etc. ties me to the bed at night so that I can't get up." Again, you'll see sleep disturbances, not sleeping or having nightmares. You may see untreated sores, ulcers, That means that they're physically being neglected, not being repositioned and left in one position for several hours. Some signs of financial abuse may include fake signatures or financial documents. If you see this or the person says to you, I have this paperwork, but it's not my signature, I don't know what this is, that may be a sign that they're being financially exploited. Unusual or quick changes in a will or other financial documents. For instance, all of a sudden, Mr. Jones signs his house over to a new caregiver when for years he's talked about leaving the house to his daughter. Unusual changes in a banking account or money management. All of a sudden, an account is closed and then a new one's opened with Mr. Jones on it, but also someone that he just recently met or a new caregiver. Large amounts of money being taken out of the bank and unpaid bills. Some bank tellers are trained and will look out for these things and report to APS, especially in your smaller communities where they really get to know their customers. They'll notice if something's off. Also, right now, scams are really bad. You have the grandparent scam where someone calls and says, Grandma, this is so-and-so. I'm in Mexico and I can't get home. I need you to send me $2,000. Those are really popular. They tug on the grandparents' hearts. So there's also one, if you don't pay your taxes that you owe, you're going to be arrested right now. We're going to send out an officer for you. There's also one that's associated that they call and they say, hey, you have a crime associated with your social security number. Please call and verify your social security number. So you have some signs of emotional and behavioral, physical, and financial abuse. Imprint those in your mind and remember them. So anything you see out of the norm, even if it's not included in those signs that we just went over, may be a sign of a crime, and as a mandated reporter, it is our duty to report it. So a little review here. Remember the signs of emotional abuse, financial abuse, and physical abuse. Have them etched in your memory. Take action. If you see something, say something. Every point of contact is a chance to look for signs. Everyone you talk to, it's a chance to make a difference. Small suspicions are enough to call and maybe change a person's life for the better. It's not our job to substantiate the abuse, it's our job to report suspected abuse. So, how should we report it? Any person who knows or has reasonable cause to believe that a vulnerable adult is being or has been abused, neglected, exploited, abandoned, intimidated, or is committing self-neglect shall report the information immediately to the Department of Family Services, to law enforcement agencies such as the police, sheriff, highway patrol. You could call the Medicare Fraud Control Unit or the Department of Criminal Investigation. Anyone who in good faith makes a report is immune from the civil liabilities for making the report. Okay, the reporting process. It's easier than it looks here on paper. So the reporter is going to contact the local Department of Family Services office of the county where the concern has taken place. The local law enforcement can also be contacted to make a report. Most of the time, I believe the Department of Family Services contacts law enforcement, but that could be something that you could ask them when you're on the phone with them, if they're going to do that or if they need you to. Reporters need to have as much identifying information regarding the vulnerable adult as possible, such as the name, phone number, address, as well as the nature of the concern. Give them as much detail as you can. DFS will then screen the report to see if it meets the statute and policy definitions of abuse, neglect, self-neglect of a vulnerable adult. If it does, then a case is open. depending on the above screening process, and the vulnerable adult will be contacted within 3 days of the report being made, unless an immediate response is needed, such as the vulnerable adult is in immediate danger. As a reporter, you have the right to remain anonymous if you'd like, and upon making that report, you are exempt from civil or criminal liabilities in making that report on a vulnerable adult unless it is a false report. DFS won't be able to call you back to let you know what has occurred, if it was a case, if it wasn't. They can't do anything. They can't release any information based on the report due to the confidentiality restrictions per Wyoming state statutes. In all cases, reports or referrals, the vulnerable adult has the right to choose how they want to live, and DFS does not have the authority to force that adult in question to make a different decision. If the APS goes out there and the vulnerable adult says they're fine, I gave my grandson that money, he takes care of me, I don't see anything wrong with the way I live, if they're perfectly happy with the way that they are, unless they've been deemed incompetent by 2 doctors or a court, then they have the right to refuse the Department of Family Services help, and APS really can't do much about it. If you feel nothing is being done, call again. You may get a different APS worker, or that same APS worker may see a different scenario, may be able to get that vulnerable adult alone without that abusing caregiver, and things might change. So just keep calling. It's the squeaky wheel gets the oil. So put to memory those signs of elder abuse that we went over. Pay attention and be on the lookout. If you suspect abuse, what can a provider do? You can report elder abuse by calling the Adult Protective Service hotline at 1-800-457-3659. You could call your local Department of Family Service office, or you can be rerouted by calling 307-777-7921. You can also find a listing of the Department of Family Services by county at dfs.wyo.gov. And you can click on that website right there in the yellow box. You can call your local law enforcement agency non-emergency line, or if the adult is in immediate danger, then you can call your emergency 911. This is a list of the DFS offices by county with the address and phone numbers. And again, you can find this list at dfs.wyo.gov. Remember, any sign may be a crime. Please report it. Get those signs and symptoms etched in your mind, and if you suspect something, please call. Thank you for attending the presentation, and for the rest of the presentation, Mark Kelly, the Wyoming Department of Health Program Specialist, will take you through the slides. Thank you. Mark?
Thank you, Patty. So to break up the flow of this presentation, would like to show you now 3 videos of victims of elder abuse telling their stories, so you can see just how important it is to remember these signs and act on them as soon as you have a suspicion. So we will now see these videos. Let me just get this ready for you. Okay, we are going to start with Donna's story.
He would say stuff like, the only reason I keep you around is so I can see the grandkids. You'll never make it without. This was a constant, everyday thing. You're not going to make it. Your credit stinks. Nobody wants you. It was just put downs all the time. Of my self-esteem was gone. I didn't see no hope. I didn't see any end. I'll be honest, I wanted to kill myself. I had thought I was so unhappy, and I didn't know how to get out of it. So I needed some outlet to talk to somebody. I was so miserable. I don't know how many times I thought about driving off the bridge on my way to work or whatever. I just, sometimes when you feel trapped, you don't know what to do. You don't know where to go.
The abuse was more emotional and verbal and financial and just controlling than it was physical abuse. And very often that's the type of abuse that's hard for somebody to recognize. It's hard for people out in the community to recognize, but also hard for a victim to recognize and label as being domestic violence.
And now we have Linda's story.
When he was finished with me, he put me back on the bed. Everything was done from behind, and he had me out on my bed like this. And he covered me up with all my bedding, and he goes, "Do you know your family?" And I said, "What?" He said, "I know your family." He said, "You say anything about what happened to you here?" He says, "I'll take them out, I'll come back, and I'll kill you." And when I realized he closed the door, I just said the Lord's Prayer, reached for my phone and dialed 911.
A number of officers were able to respond. We had a lot of things going for us. There was snow on the ground. We were able to follow footprints. The person was intoxicated, so they weren't thinking clearly. They made a lot of mistakes, including dropping personal items. So within a very short time, we zeroed in on the person that was responsible.
And lastly, we have Tammy's story.
It got to a point where he was really strong-arming me, you know, like he'd take my arm and twist it behind my back and try and force me to do what I didn't want to do. And, you know, there was a couple of times when he'd do that, and I'm not as strong as him. I'm not a man. I couldn't handle that, but he would try and force himself. So, I mean, it got to a point where I threatened to call the police if he didn't leave me alone. I needed to go. I needed to get away. I didn't want to see him. I didn't want to have anything to do with him. I didn't want him to come back there. I didn't want to have confrontation with him. And so that's what I did. I packed up everything and moved it into a storage. Went back to the apartment, wrote a note and left the key for the apartment. I left the key there, and I called the manager and told him that I was moving out and I wasn't going to come back. I was leaving the key. And as I closed the door, I'm locked out now. I'm thinking, what am I going to do? I don't have money to go rent a motel or anything like that. So, and I'm hot and sweaty, and so by now it's dark, and I'm thinking, where am I going to go? I don't know anybody out here. So what did I do? I went back to the storage that I rented, put the things in, and that's where I stayed that night. I didn't know what else to do.
Now you see just how important it is to remember the signs, commit them to memory, and then to act on them if you feel there is any suspicion. It is your duty to report it. If you suspect something, it's not your duty to deduct what's going on. Even if you think it's minor, it may be a sign of something bigger going on. You may be one piece of a puzzle that they're trying to create a picture of what's going on, and your information may be key to finding out if there is abuse going on, or it may not, but it's your duty to report it and to see if we can help people if needs be. So 12 things that everybody can do to prevent elder abuse. Again, remember those signs, commit them to memory. We can't stress that enough, because when you're in the moment and you're caring for somebody, you're going into people's homes and you see something, it should trigger something that will help remind you to call DFS, local law enforcement, and the other methods that we will describe there. You can also volunteer to be a friendly visitor to a nursing home resident or to a homebound older person in our community. The more they see people, the less likely an abuser has to abuse them, because there are people who care and people watching out for them. That's to prevent isolation as well. You can also send a letter to a local paper, radio, or TV station suggesting that they cover World Elder Abuse Awareness Day next year or Grandparents' Day in September. You can join Ageless Alliance, an organization that connects people of all ages nationwide who stand united for the dignity of older people and for the elimination of elder abuse. And the website is there if you want it. We also encourage that if you know of a caregiver who could use a respite break, that they speak to the local senior center so that we can get some help, get some respite, so people can, both the care receiver and the caregiver could have a respite break as well. It gives people the break. It's less likely for abuse to happen if stress and everything else is lowered and minimized. We also encourage you to speak to local bank managers and hope that they will train tellers, maybe pass this training on to them, on how to detect elder financial abuse. What are the signs? Are they suddenly taking now $200 a week when they never took out that much cash before? Is there anything that's unusual? It's a change in circumstance. If the tellers are aware, less likely for financial abuse. Also educating doctors. Older people visit doctors more, so educating doctors to ask older patients about possible family violence in their lives. If they're aware, they're more likely to pass it on to APS. Reaching out to APS and long-term care Ombudsman, Patty Hall, to learn how to support their work, helping older people and adults with disabilities who may be more at risk. With the new school year starting in September, try and organize an Aging with Dignity essay or poster contest in a local school. So again, raising awareness so young people may spot something that's going on. Also involving religious congregation leaders, that they may present some kind of speech or raise an awareness and during sermons and so on, putting a message on the bulletin board so that every facet of people's lives, that we are all aware that elder abuse happens and we know the signs and we're here to try and prevent it. And lastly, on this 12-step plan, talk to friends and family members about how we can all age well and reduce abuse with programs and services like improved law enforcement, community centers, and public transportation. It is up to all of us to prevent and address elder abuse through our employees and family members. We all play a part in trying to protect older people and elder abuse from happening. Now, the next two slides are summaries. So we just wanted to re-emphasize some key points for you. And one of those catchphrases is that any sign may be a crime. Please report it. It's your duty to report whatever you suspect, and any suspicion is enough. Doesn't matter what it is. Again, you may be putting a piece in a puzzle that they may be able to see what's going on. So there are three areas of elder abuse categories: emotional, behavioral, financial, and physical. Remember those signs, commit those to memory, and that's your main step here. Take action. Every point of contact is a chance to look for signs, and the more we communicate with our residents, participants, so that they know that people care for them and that you can then spot changes in behavioral patterns. If you don't see them very often or don't talk to them very often, you won't know if they're having a mood change or they're very upset or very sad, unless you are regularly in contact with people. Obviously offering a respite care as well, and getting networking with doctors, banks, and other institutions, religious organizations, so that everybody is working together to prevent elder abuse. Okay, so the next section we are going to do a knowledge check. This is not the Q&A, this is simply what do you remember? And we are going to offer the chance for you to unmute your own mic. You will be able to unmute your mic, or you can raise your hand. There should be an option for that on the presentation here. Or you can simply put the answer in the chat room feature, and we will see that, and everybody else will see that, and you will be able to answer these questions. We'd like your feedback at this point. So the first knowledge check question: what are the signs of elder abuse? Can you put them down from memory? Can you put them in the chat, or unmute yourself and talk to us all? We welcome your contribution. So what do you remember? We know that there are physical, we know there's financial, and we know there is behavioral or emotional signs. But what are they? Can you put them in the chat feature now? What do you remember? What stood out to you? What would you be looking for? If you're visiting an older person, if you're talking on the phone on a regular wellness check. This is your chance to participate. We'd like to see what you know or what you don't know. So maybe we need to go over that. Patty, I don't see
And
anybody.
if you're attending via phone, you can unmute yourself and respond verbally. We don't have to have it typed in. But we did go over those signs. Sores, bed sores, burn marks, those are some signs.
Maybe we should go back to that slide. That
Okay.
may well help.
There we go. We got bruises, broken bones, sores. Very good.
Okay.
Easily started when they were once very confident, noticing signatures that they didn't make. Very good.
Good. Yeah, I like that's a very powerful one. Easily startled. If they are suffering from mental abuse, then yeah, that will be one. And this is a point where if you have any that is not on that list, we welcome that as well, because that is not an exhaustive list. That is simply some of the things that maybe are the most common, but there may be other things that ring alarm bells that we just didn't have room for. There's so many areas where people can be hurt and abused that we simply can't list them all.
Yeah, so when they say my family will be mad if I do, that's a good sign too, that they may be being threatened or punished when they're not doing what the caregiver wants.
Absolutely.
Mood changes, yes. So, very good answers.
Mm-hmm. So let's move on to our second knowledge check question. Who do I report suspected abuse to?
So if you're talking with someone and you leave a conversation with them and you're like, oh, something's not right, or you know for a fact that something is going on, who are you going to call? You know, anytime that thought enters your mind, should I call them? It's always a yes. Oh, I don't know. Yes, you should call them. So yes, the Department of Family Services is a very good one.
That is definitely more important than any internal communication between your organizations. It is just more important to get straight to the authority who's going to handle the investigation and alert them of any suspicion, even if you feel it's minor. Maybe they're no longer not brushing their hair anymore, or they're not eating the same. They won't let you even put your hand on their shoulder and they're flinching and so on. So anything like that, which you may have normally have done, is a sign that something may be going on and you must report it.
Yeah, and if you're worried about reporting it because you don't want somebody in your office to know, or you don't want that person to know that you called, who you can remain anonymous. Always remember that. Just say, I don't want my name down on the report. I just want to report this to you. Yes, law enforcement. If you're not sure the family services, Department of Family Services number, you could call the local non-emergency number, or you could also, if it's an emergency, call law enforcement. So we have a answer to the first question, sores and nervous being neglected. So those are good answers from the first one.
Absolutely. And I'd just like to add on to what you said before, Patty, is that you have nothing to fear at making a report. You can remain anonymous. And obviously the only time that there may be some comebacks if you make a false report, which you won't. But people who do, then that's the only time. So long as it's a valid concern, even if it's minor, there will be no repercussions from that. So just wanted to stress that point. Patty, if you want to add anything on that point?
No, but you're right. You know, once you call and make that report, even if you're anonymous, you can guarantee that nobody's going to come and you know, you'll be free of civil penalties, civil oh, what's the word I'm trying to think of?
Liability.
Yes, there you go. Thank you. So it's always a good idea to report it, and again, you can remain anonymous. So our answers were APS and law enforcement. You could also call, you know, if the vulnerable adult is on Medicaid, you could call the Medicaid Fraud Control Unit. They could investigate that. They would most likely work with Department of Family Services and APS to kind of you know, back up each other and investigate that. You could call, you know, Highway Patrol, and again, you can remain anonymous.
Excellent. And the final knowledge check question is, can you please give examples of action you can take to prevent elder abuse from occurring? Same thing, please unmute yourself and feel free to participate here, or write it in the chat feature.
So what could we do to kind of prevent elder abuse from occurring, or kind of protect our elderly out there, or not even prevent it, but get the word out there that, you know, this is a thing, this does happen, and educate people on the signs of abuse. What kind of things can we do?
Well, maybe I should go over that slide again very briefly, and we'll just sort of skim over that and just give it another refresh. So let me just back. Okay, volunteering, sending a letter, provide education. That's good. Thank you, Deza.
Very good.
Joint Agents Alliance. Go on.
Visit with them regularly. Visit with the elderly regularly. Absolutely.
Yeah, then you know if changes are occurring because you know what their normal pattern is, if their normal state of mind is. Educating bank managers, doctors, keeping in contact with Ombudsman and APS, so that you know you keep up to date with new processes, with new signs, or any other information that may change. And so keeping in contact, keep up to date. Those are all good methods there.
Yeah, and it's always a good idea to visit them regularly, because what happens is your con artists, or the ones that are wanting to take advantage of these elderly people, they target a specific type. They're going to target ones who probably don't have family around or don't have family close by. They're going to, you know, they're going to target ones that don't have any outside connection or have very little outside connection to people, because they're easy prey. So visiting them regularly is a good thing to do to prevent elder abuse from occurring. Also providing education, talking to their friends and families, encouraging bank and tellers to be more aware of those changes. Those are good. Visit with them also to see what family can do to help them.
Thank you. And Jane Carlson has put her details in the chat here. It will come up as well later, but please feel free to reach out to her anytime to discuss prospective cases, and let her know the best number to call you on, so she can discuss that further. So thank you, Jane, for that. And just wanted to use this time to say that I'm sure you have these procedures in place, but it's finding those who are more at risk, maybe those who don't have family nearby, who don't have people regularly calling or visiting them. Those will people be more at risk for abuse. So those who are more likely to be isolated, we need to find a way to make sure that they are also taken care of. Okay. So on this slide here, this is just references and resources page. These are all the statistics where we got them from. Most of these resources came from the National Center for Elder Abuse, the videos, the statistics page, and I'm sure you saw this morning all of the PDF documents that I sent out, all of these this information for you to refer back to later. This is what we found as current and up-to-date information. But please feel free to reach out to the USC website with other training materials, webinars, and so on. They have a very vast array, big database of information on this subject. So in partnership with the Department of Family Services, the State Ombudsman, and H Division Department of Health, we would like to thank you for joining this presentation. And we are now open this part of the presentation to question and answers from all of us, and as Jane as well. And I'd like to invite you, Jane, as well, to feel free to comment on anything as well from that's been mentioned here, any questions that anybody has, or you can put it in the chat feature so we can just address it as we have been.
And if later this week, if anyone thinks of a question or a situation that they get put in, always at any time, feel free to contact any of us with your question or your concern or just an inquiry. Hey, you know, what about this? You know, we will welcome anything anybody, you know, has questions or concerns on.
And if you have any updates to our list of maybe some obvious signs that we have not put on that you feel future people who will be viewing this presentation would benefit from, please feel free to put them in the chat or tell us now. Well, as we are waiting for any potential questions, maybe we would like to have some closing statements from Jane. Make a statement as well to introduce yourself, and Patty, as we are closing out this presentation today on World Elder Abuse Awareness Day.
Yeah, I just want everyone to know that our elderly, you know, especially those who don't have people or have family close by, they're very vulnerable. And sometimes they're stubborn and don't always want our help. But if we get to know them, get them to trust us, it will really not only help them, you know, and make them feel more confident and stuff. It will take them out of the limelight of those who may want to abuse them or target them as easy prey. And it's kind of, you know, they took care of us for a long time. It's our turn to take care of them now. So I really encourage everyone to, you know, remember those signs, you know, pay attention when you're talking to the elderly that you come across, and you know, it may not even be someone elderly. It could be just a vulnerable adult. So just keep a lookout, and like I said, if anything, any kind of little thought comes into your head about, oh, that's not right, or should I, then absolutely make that call.
Hi, everybody. This is Jane Carlson. Hopefully you can hear me.
Yes,
We can.
Jane, we can.
Okay, great. Yeah, this is a great training, and just kind of piggybacking on what Patty said, we are very worried about the more isolated ones, the ones with no family or no appropriate family to take care of them or help them. And I would just sort of reiterate the less obvious signs, like the ones who seem a little more afraid or anxious than usual. You know, like I think Mark mentioned ones that maybe suddenly aren't, you know, showering or something like that. And then the ones that don't answer for themselves, it's super concerning. And I think it was Patty that mentioned this earlier in the presentation, to keep calling and keep just, you know, I don't know, kind of that squeaky wheel thing, and you know, maybe what you say will sort of click everything into place, and there will be able to be some kind of help for that person. So that's really all I wanted to say, but thanks everybody.
Thank you so much, Jane. And just to piggyback of what you said, it's, you know, even if you feel situation's getting worse, you may not feel it's an emergency, but it's definitely deteriorating. Call in, let us know it's getting worse, because then again, whatever statutes and procedures that, you know, the people in DFS needs to go through, it may bump up the chain, it may not. But what you are doing is simply alerting us that there is something maybe wrong, and somebody may need to do something about it. And that is the most important thing. And just like Patty said, these people looked after us for many years, and it's our turn now to look after them, make sure they're not being abused in their old age. And so today you've joined this webinar presentation, but I know from the website, the USC website, there are many hundreds of different trainers all across the world, people trying to raise awareness, build strong support for elders. And we are doing this now for Wyoming, and you have a huge part in that. And I want to thank you for your hard work, and also for joining in on this training, because really it's all down to you. It's down to the boots on the ground, people who see our elderly people day in, day out, who will be able to make this change. And don't be afraid to pick up the phone and call DFS at any time, APS as well. So from all of us, we'd like to thank you for joining. And any questions, you've seen our phone numbers and emails, reach out to us at any time. And thank you for joining today.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks everybody.